In the history of American crime, few names strike fear and fascination as much as the Zodiac Killer. More than half a century has passed since his reign of terror shook California, yet the case remains unsolved. His cryptic letters, coded puzzles, and chilling threats against the public turned him from a killer into a legend of darkness. But behind the myth lies a string of brutal crimes, real victims, and a trail of mystery that law enforcement has never been able to fully unravel. To understand the Zodiac, we must step back into the late 1960s, a turbulent time in America. The Vietnam War raged overseas. Civil rights protests and cultural revolutions were transforming society. San Francisco, once known for its beauty and counterculture, would soon be remembered for fear. It was here in Northern California that the Zodiac emerged from the shadows. Kitchen knife: the first confirmed attack, Lake Herman Road. On the cold night of December 20, 1968, high school students Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday drove out to Lake Herman Road near Vallejo, California. It was supposed to be a quiet date, a chance to be together away from the world. But by the end of the night, they would become the Zodiac's first confirmed victims. At around 11:15 p.m., witnesses saw their Rambler station wagon parked in a remote Lover's Lane area. Minutes later, gunshots shattered the stillness of the countryside. When police arrived, the scene was horrifying. David Faraday, just 17 years old, had been shot once in the head at point-blank range. Betty Lou Jensen, 16, had tried to run. She was shot 5 times in the back as she fled across the dirt road. Shell casings suggested the weapon was a .22 caliber semi-automatic pistol. There was no robbery, no sexual assault, no obvious motive. The brutality and cold precision baffled investigators. At first, the murders seemed like another senseless tragedy. No one knew that this was the beginning of a nightmare that would terrify California for years. Broken Heart: Blue Rock Springs, the killer returns. 6 months later, on July 4, 1969, another attack struck. This time, the killer proved he wasn't just another criminal, he wanted recognition. At around midnight, Darlene Ferrin, 22, and Michael Majo, 19, parked at Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo. They were enjoying a quiet holiday evening together when a car pulled up beside them. The driver left briefly, only to return minutes later. This time, he stepped out and shined a blinding flashlight into their car. Without warning, he opened fire with a 9 pistol. Bullets tore through the car windows, hitting both occupants. The killer then walked away, but hearing Michael's moans, returned and shot them again. Darlene Ferrin was struck multiple times and died on arrival at the hospital. Michael Majo, though critically wounded, survived. He later gave a shaky but valuable description. A man in his late 20s to early 30s, stocky build, light brown hair. But what truly set this crime apart came an hour later. Telephone: the Zodiac calls. At 12:40 a.m., a call rang through to Vallejo Police Department. A calm male voice spoke. "I want to report a double murder. If you go 1 mile east on Columbus Parkway, you'll find kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9 Luger. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye." The caller hung up. Tracing the call led to a payphone not far from the police station. For the first time, the killer himself had reached out. He wasn't just killing, he wanted credit. And more chillingly, he claimed responsibility for the earlier Lake Herman murders. A pattern was forming: violence followed by taunting communication. Envelope: the letters begin. On July 31, 1969, local newspapers, the San Francisco Chronicle, the San Francisco Examiner, and the Vallejo Times-Herald, each received a handwritten letter. All 3 were nearly identical. The writer claimed responsibility for the murders at Lake Herman Road and Blue Rock Springs. But more disturbingly, each letter contained 1/3 of a coded cipher, a strange puzzle made of symbols, circles, squares, and cryptic markings. The killer demanded that the newspapers print these ciphers on the front page. If they refused, he threatened to cruise around all weekend killing lone people in the night, then move on to kill again, until I end up with a dozen people over the weekend. The newspapers, fearing public panic, published the letters. The public's reaction was explosive. A killer was not only murdering people but playing games with the press and police. The ciphers became the talk of California. Teachers, students, and amateur codebreakers all tried their hand. The nation was hooked. Who was this man hiding behind strange symbols? Unlocked. The first cipher cracked. Just a week later, on August 8, 1969, a local schoolteacher named Donald Hardin and his wife Betty cracked the first Zodiac cipher, known as the 408-symbol cipher. The message was chilling. I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest because man is the most dangerous animal of all. The letter continued, boasting about how killing gave him power and excitement. Yet, crucially, the cipher ended with a statement. I will not give you my name, because you will try to slow me down or stop my collecting of slaves for my afterlife. The words revealed not just a murderer, but someone who saw killing as a twisted game, almost a ritual. But despite cracking the code, there was no clue to his true identity. Fear grips California. By the summer of 1969, the Zodiac Killer was no longer just a local threat. He was a statewide obsession. Newspapers ran daily headlines. Families locked their doors at night. Couples thought twice before driving to quiet lovers' lanes. The killer had learned something powerful. With every letter, every cipher, he controlled the media. He wasn't just a murderer, he was a master of fear. But his reign of terror was far from over. Within months, he would strike again, this time in a way that shocked the world, proving that the Zodiac was no ordinary criminal, but a predator who thrived on attention and chaos. By late 1969, the Zodiac Killer had already carved his name into the nightmares of Northern California. But for him, the murders alone weren't enough. He wanted recognition, control, and above all, fear. Through his chilling letters, cryptic symbols, and unpredictable attacks, he turned himself into more than a criminal. He became a public spectacle, feeding on the panic he created. Performing arts, the Presidio Heights murder. On October 11, 1969, the Zodiac struck again, this time in the heart of San Francisco itself. That evening, Paul Stein, a 29-year-old cab driver, picked up a fare near the theater district. His passenger requested a ride to Presidio Heights, an upscale neighborhood in the city. As they reached the corner of Washington and Cherry Streets, the situation took a deadly turn. Instead of paying, the passenger pulled out a gun and shot Stein once in the head. Unlike the earlier Lover's Lane attacks, this crime was brazen and carried out in a residential area. A group of teenagers witnessed the aftermath from a nearby window and immediately called police. They described the suspect as a stocky white male, around 35 to 45 years old, with a crew cut and glasses. Officers rushed to the scene, and here, a critical mistake occurred. Due to a miscommunication over the police radio, the suspect's description went out as an African-American male. Officers actually stopped a man fitting the real Zodiac description just blocks from the murder, but let him walk away. Many believe they came face to face with the killer that night and released him. The Zodiac didn't waste time in taking credit. Just days later, the San Francisco Chronicle received a letter containing a piece of Paul Stein's bloodstained shirt. It was undeniable proof. The Zodiac had killed the cab driver. In the letter, he taunted the police for missing their chance to catch him and threatened to attack school buses, boasting that he would shoot children as they exited. The city was gripped with terror. Parents clutched their kids tighter. School routes were heavily patrolled. The Zodiac had found his most effective weapon, not his gun, but fear itself. Envelope. The letters grow stranger. The Zodiac's communications escalated after Stein's murder. His letters became longer, stranger, and more menacing. Some were filled with bizarre ramblings about collecting slaves for the afterlife. Others contained new ciphers, daring the public to solve them. In November 1969, he mailed the infamous 340-character cipher, later known as the Z340. For decades, it remained unsolved, taunting cryptographers, police, and amateur sleuths alike. At the time, newspapers published the letter in full, and once again the public scrambled to crack the code. But unlike the earlier cipher, this one resisted all efforts. For 50 years, the Z340 remained one of true crime's greatest mysteries, only to be solved in 2020 by an international team of codebreakers. Its message, a chilling but taunting statement. I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise all the sooner. I now have enough slaves to work for me where everyone else has nothing when they reach paradise. The Zodiac wasn't revealing his identity. Instead, he reinforced the idea that killing was his path to immortality. Evergreen Tree, the Lake Berryessa attack. Just weeks before Paul Stein's murder, another shocking crime unfolded. On September 27, 1969, college students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were picnicking near Lake Berryessa, a scenic area north of San Francisco. Their peaceful afternoon was interrupted when a man approached wearing a bizarre black executioner-style hood. On his chest, he had drawn the now infamous crosshair symbol, a circle with a cross running through it, the mark of the Zodiac. Carrying a gun and pre-cut lengths of plastic clothesline, the hooded man told the couple he was an escaped convict who needed their car and money. He calmly tied them up before pulling out a knife and stabbing them repeatedly. Brian was stabbed 6 times, Cecilia 10 times. Thinking them both fatally wounded, the attacker left, driving away in Brian's car. Before leaving the area, he stopped at the couple's car door and scrawled a message in black marker. Vallejo 12-2068, 7469, Sep 2769-6, 30 by knife. This chilling note listed the dates of his previous murders, signing the attack as his own. Despite her wounds, Cecilia managed to describe the attacker to police before slipping into a coma. She later died in the hospital. Brian miraculously survived and gave law enforcement a clear account of the Zodiac's voice, behavior, and costume. The Lake Berryessa attack marked a turning point. Until then, the Zodiac had mostly used guns in quick assaults. But here, he introduced ritual, costume, and theatricality, almost as if he was staging a performance for history. Newspaper media obsession. By the end of 1969, the Zodiac was everywhere. Newspapers published his every word. Radio shows debated his motives. Amateur detectives flooded police with tips. The killer himself seemed addicted to the coverage. He demanded that his symbol appear in the press. He sent diagrams of bombs he claimed he would use to blow up school buses. He even wrote about watching children on the playground and fantasizing about killing them. Each letter added to the mythology. He wasn't just killing. He was building a persona, making himself unforgettable. The public, horrified yet fascinated, couldn't look away. The Zodiac was playing a game, and the entire state of California was his unwilling audience. As the suspects emerge. Amid the chaos, police scrambled for leads. Over the years, thousands of men were questioned, and hundreds became official suspects, but a few stood out. Arthur Lee Allen, perhaps the most infamous suspect. Allen was a convicted child molester who lived near several crime scenes. A friend claimed Allen had spoken of wanting to kill couples and call himself Zodiac. Police even searched his home and found disturbing evidence, but no definitive link. Allen died in 1992, and DNA comparisons later failed to prove his involvement, though many still believe he was the killer. Rick Marshall, a projectionist who lived in San Francisco, Marshall was considered due to his interest in ciphers and films. Yet no hard evidence tied him to the crimes. Lawrence Kane, linked by some witnesses to the Zodiac's possible appearance, Kane also lived in areas connected to the crimes. Still, proof was lacking. Countless others, from military men to teachers to recluses, dozens of names have surfaced over the years. Each seemed to fit part of the puzzle, but never the whole picture. The Zodiac's real identity remained elusive. He seemed to vanish as quickly as he appeared, always one step ahead. The frustration of law enforcement. The investigation involved multiple agencies, local police, the California Highway Patrol, the FBI, but cooperation was often strained. Different jurisdictions had different suspects and theories. Evidence sharing was slow. The Zodiac exploited this disunity, spreading his crimes across regions, confusing investigators at every turn. Detectives pored over handwriting samples, ballistics, and witness accounts. Some swore they were close to catching him, only to have the trail go cold. The killer's ability to strike in different places with different methods made profiling difficult. Was he a lone drifter, a local with military training, a genius, or simply lucky? The lack of answers only deepened the fear and the fascination. Milky Way, the Zodiac's fame. By the dawn of the 1970s, the Zodiac was no longer just a criminal. He was a cultural figure, his symbols scrawled on walls, his story whispered in homes across the country. Hollywood and the press couldn't resist. The idea of an intelligent, taunting killer who toyed with police was too dramatic to ignore. The Zodiac had achieved what he wanted. He was unforgettable. But as the new decade began, questions loomed. Would the Zodiac continue killing? Would his letters reveal more secrets? Or was this all part of a game he had already won? The answer, as it turned out, would be as strange and frustrating as the killer himself, the endless mystery. By 1970, the Zodiac Killer had cemented his reputation as one of the most infamous criminals in American history. His letters had terrified the public, his murders had baffled police, and his cryptic ciphers had captured the imagination of amateur sleuths everywhere. But while his name was on every front page, his true identity remained hidden. What followed was a strange mix of silence, scattered clues, false leads, and decades of obsession that continues even today. Scroll the later letters. The Zodiac didn't stop writing. Between 1970 and 1974, dozens of letters were mailed to newspapers, police, and even private individuals. Each was filled with his now familiar blend of arrogance, threats, and bizarre ramblings. In April 1970, the San Francisco Chronicle received a letter in which the Zodiac included a cipher claiming to reveal his identity. When cracked, it turned out to be nonsense, another cruel game. By June, another letter arrived, mocking police yet again. This one featured a crude diagram of a bomb he claimed he would use to blow up a school bus. He described it in great detail, complete with electrical schematics. Investigators never found evidence the bomb was real, but the threat alone kept the public in a state of panic. In March 1971, the Zodiac sent a card featuring a strange image of bloodied rabbits and the phrase, "Peekaboo, you are doomed." Enclosed was another piece of Paul Stein's shirt, proof once again that the writer was indeed the real Zodiac. But then, just as suddenly as his reign of terror had escalated, his confirmed communication slowed. New moon, did the Zodiac stop killing? By 1974, the last widely accepted Zodiac letter arrived at the San Francisco Chronicle. In it, the killer bizarrely complained about the movie The Exorcist, calling it the best satirical comedy that I have ever seen. The note ended with a threat and his trademark crosshair symbol. After that, the letters largely stopped. A few later messages surfaced in the late 1970s and even into the 1980s, but their authenticity remains debated. Had the Zodiac finally quit? Did he die, go to prison under another name, or simply tire of the game? No one knew for sure. The killings attributed to him appeared to cease after 1969. Some detectives believed he may have committed other murders that were never linked. Others thought he had enjoyed the attention so much that stopping was impossible. The silence was almost as haunting as his crimes. A killer who thrived on publicity had simply vanished into the fog. The prime suspects. Over the decades, countless suspects have been proposed. A few stand out above the rest. Arthur Leigh Allen, perhaps the most famous Zodiac suspect. A school teacher with a disturbing criminal record, Allen was known to have an obsession with young children and was convicted of molesting minors. He lived near Vallejo, close to the first Zodiac crime scenes. A friend reported that Allen had once talked about killing couples and calling himself Zodiac. Police searched his home and found disturbing items, but not enough to charge him. Despite heavy suspicion, Allen was never formally linked to the murders. In the 2000s, DNA taken from letters was compared to his, and no match was found. Still, many detectives believed until his death in 1992 that Allen was the best candidate. Lawrence Kane, a Navy veteran and real estate agent who lived near areas where some victims were last seen, survived a brain injury that reportedly altered his behavior. Identified by some witnesses as resembling the man seen after Paul Stine's murder. Still, evidence was circumstantial, and DNA later appeared to rule him out. Rick Marshall, a San Francisco projectionist with an interest in codes and cryptography. His handwriting bore similarities to the Zodiac. Again, though, no solid evidence tied him to the crimes. Other suspects. Over the years, names like Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, Bruce Davis, a Manson family member, and even completely unknown drifters have been suggested. Each had elements that seemed to fit, but none could be proven. The result: decades of obsession theories and endless frustration. DNA modern investigations. With advances in DNA technology, hope for solving the case was renewed. In the early 2000s, investigators attempted to extract genetic material from saliva on Zodiac stamps and envelopes, but the results were frustratingly inconclusive. In 2018, the arrest of the Golden State Killer, caught after investigators used genealogical DNA databases, gave new energy to the Zodiac case. Could the same method unmask him? So far, the answer has been no. The DNA samples from Zodiac letters are too degraded or contaminated for a clear match. However, technology continues to improve, and many believe it's only a matter of time before a usable profile emerges. Jigsaw: The Solved Cipher of 2020. For decades, the Zodiac's 340-character cipher, Z340, remained unsolved. But in late 2020, a team of codebreakers from the US, Australia, and Belgium finally cracked it. The solution revealed a message taunting the authorities, saying he was not afraid of execution because it would send him to paradise, and again mocking the police for failing to catch him. Though it didn't reveal his name, the solution reignited public fascination. The Zodiac's ghost still loomed large half a century later. Television: The Zodiac in popular culture. Part of the Zodiac's enduring legacy is how deeply he has embedded himself into culture. Films, documentaries, books, and endless YouTube videos have kept the mystery alive. David Fincher's 2007 film Zodiac, starring Jake Gyllenhaal and Robert Downey Jr., brought the case to a new generation, portraying the obsession of journalists and police who hunted the killer. Podcasts and online forums continue to debate theories. Amateur sleuths analyze handwriting, photographs, and timelines. Even in the digital age, the Zodiac remains unsolved, his identity hiding in plain sight. Milky Way, why we still obsess? Why does the Zodiac hold such power over us? The mystery, unlike killers who were caught, Zodiac remains nameless. Anyone could imagine his face. The ciphers, his puzzles made the public participants in his crimes, as if everyone was forced to play his game. The control, he proved he could terrify a city with words as much as with bullets. The silence, by vanishing he became eternal. His legend never ended with a trial or execution. The Zodiac didn't just kill. He built a myth that endures, and that may be the most terrifying part of all. Waxing crescent moon, the case today. Today, more than 50 years later, the Zodiac case is technically still open. California authorities occasionally review the evidence, and online investigators pore over every scrap of information. In 2021, a group of private cold case investigators calling themselves the Case Breakers claimed to have identified the Zodiac as a man named Gary Francis Poste, who died in 2018. They pointed to scars on his forehead that matched witness descriptions and alleged links to crime scenes. However, law enforcement has not confirmed these claims, and many experts remain skeptical. So the mystery continues. Was the Zodiac a brilliant mastermind, or simply a lucky criminal who benefited from police mistakes? Was he Arthur Lee Allen, Gary Poste, or someone else entirely? The truth may never be known. New Moon, the endless shadow. The Zodiac Killer has been gone for decades. His letters have stopped, his gun has fallen silent, his knife no longer cuts. Yet his presence lingers. Every time a new cipher is solved, every time DNA technology advances, the world wonders, will this finally be the moment the mask is ripped away? Until then, the Zodiac remains both a man and a myth, a faceless figure lurking in the dark history of California, forever laughing at the world he once held hostage. And perhaps that was always his greatest crime, not the lives he took, but the fear he left behind.